What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Hopefully everyone is having a wonderful, fabulous day today. So today is a little bit of a good old free-for-all and just kind of feed off whatever you guys want to chat about. Yeah, I don't know. Life's been crazy day. Shelly, John, One-Arm Reefer, Lee, what's going on? Hopefully everyone is having a fabulous week today. Cheers. It's definitely been a bit of a busy one. Planet 3D, what's going on? So yeah, any question that you guys want me to know or dig into today, fire at it. This is kind of just answer you guys' questions today. Is that the great garage cellar? There's a lot of garage cellars out there. My original plan was to kind of turn that into a bit of a frag tank, but I ended up doing more of a display style. So yeah, we'll see. It still might be a little bit of a hybrid. I don't know if I did it. I don't think I did a video on it yet, but I put a XR15 in the sump and basically made a 2 foot by 2 foot section down there that I can use for frags. And half of it just because my main tank is growing so big and stuff's, starting to touch the glass. So it's a lot of fragging I got to do now just to kind of keep stuff maintained, which is an interesting way to do it. Which is, I don't know, it's weird because all this time I'm like, higher pH, make stuff grow faster. And then at the end of the day, you're just like, oh, stuff's growing too fast now. What do I do with it? So it's tricky. Shelly, welcome. Don't forget to that like button. Thank you for the super chat. And yes, if you guys are enjoying this, please do hit the like button. Definitely appreciated. Thomas, what microphone do you use when filming videos? Well, two ones. This one is a Shure SM7B broadcast microphone, which is a very popular one. You see it a lot. When filming videos, I'm pretty sure we use the same one, Thomas. This is, I don't know, I don't remember the model, but it's a little Shure ME2 or something like that. And then the Rode Wireless Go is kind of my little lab pack. I used to have bigger kind of metal chunky Audio-Technica ones, but this thing is just so light and tiny, it's hard to beat for it. Ryan, dedicated reefer, 49 super chat. Thank you, sir, much appreciated. Welcome, buddy. Michael, welcome. Ryan, where do you get your Copperbands from? I buy most of mine locally, to be honest. They sound solid. Thank you, sir. With the Copperbands, I like to be able to see them in the store. I like to make sure they're eating and make sure they're happy on that front. And that's always a big chunk of it. You want to make sure you get one that's already eating frozen. It's going to make it a lot easier transition for you to get them into your tank. A lot of people have issues with Copperbands, and a lot of that is just from the fact that it's hard to get them eating. Now, another cool thing that you can do with them that I've done with many people, and this has worked basically every single time, is using manila clams. And you can get them from a seafood market and just throw them in your freezer and just pop them into the tank, every couple days. And their little snout will get in there as the clam starts to open and they eat it and it kind of gets them going. Then you can transition to something like mysis, and that goes a really long way. Is osteoporosis type of dino cured by UV? I think so, but I'm not 100%. If you're in Mac's Facebook group, he has a good guide that kind of goes through it all, and I've linked it in, I think I have it linked in one of my videos I did with him on it. But I'll look that up later. Remind me after the stream, I'll find you that guide. It kind of says how to beat certain types of dino, and that does go a long way. Only small is good. Are you still using the Alkatronic on your tank? Just picked one up since they're on sale. Sweet. Yeah, if they're on sale, that is a great way to go. It is, out of all the testers, it is the cheapest one to run long term, and that makes a big difference in my mind. So a lot of them, I have many testers, but some of them have a higher price subscription model for reagents, but the Alkatronic I've had for years and years, and it's been pretty solid. But it's just so cheap to test, so you can test as much as you want. It's not a big expense. Now with that, you can, there is off-brand reagents you can use, same thing. I haven't done it yet, but I picked up a bunch of hoses. I'm gonna revamp mine and give it a big refresh overhaul since I've had it for a number of years now. If purchasing an AI blade 12-inch, can I add more to it later? Do they click together? Not necessarily, but you could. My wire is not going to reach. Let's see if I can sneak this close enough to the camera. Anyways, I'm pulling the one off my Nano. Can't quite get the angle. You can kind of see it. In there is a thread. I think it's an M8 thread. So in theory, you could thread them together, but you would still have 2 cords. So I mean, you could put them end to end and have cords on the opposite side and use M8 or whatever, just like a double-ended thread thing to put them together. So kind of, sort of, but it's more sleek if you just have the one bigger one in there in the first place. What do you think will be the next hot coral? UK torches Ghanies are dropping in price. Fiji yellow leather is not allowed. I don't know. I'm still in a big Ghani kick right now. I don't know what would be the next hot one. I think Speciosas in theory is, but I also think they're trickier to keep. So it's hard to say. They're really overly priced and they're sensitive. So that's kind of a tricky one. But they look cool and they're like new and novel. So that's what they have going for right now. What's going on, Mike Lemming? How you doing, buddy? Not everyone. Fiji yellow exports are allowed again. Studio setup looks great. Thank you. Slowly but surely. I decided to get a bit fancier today with the dual cameras. Got the tank background or the normal background. Normally I green screen it, but I was like, I'll just play with some multicam today for fun. I set this up earlier, so a little experimenting. Mo Reef, how you doing, buddy? Mike, how you doing? How's your big tank going? It's been a while since I've seen that one. Ready for a loaded question. Shoot. Always ready. This is funny. On a single note, the other day my wife was like, do you want a taste of the Single Life? And then she like hands me one of these. And it's called the Single Life. Or a beer. It cracked me up. Planet tie-in. Zoas seem to be coming back in popularity. Zoas are always fun. They're easy, which is nice. You can have it inside of, of a nano tank or anything. You don't really have to worry much about dosing. Like, if I ever do like a work office tank or something, like Zoas would be super easy, super low maintenance, and it's a great way to go. Michael Baum, thank you for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated, sure. Much appreciated. Apparently Fiji yellow leathers don't look great under blues. No, this is true. They do under the whites, they look great. Under the blues, you kind of like lose that yellow color. What are you drinking tonight? Any good rum recommendations? I was on a very Fish Ventura. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. I was on a very big kick of bamboo rum for quite a while. I haven't had it in a while, but I was on a big kick of that one for a few months. Super duper tasty. I don't know, I haven't tried any new ones in a while, but I will get back to you. Maybe next week I'll find a good one. Tidal Gardens, what's going on, fam? Welcome, welcome. Safra, I purchased some Fiji's Acros the last few weeks, and the tenuous, there we go, is fire. Nice. Yeah, there's definitely some nice ones out there. Okay, Mike, I have a 125 with minimal elk calcium demand, very minimal. I was dosing kelp, Kimura dose at 1 ml per minute, which ended up being a lot, I guess. I'll test the elk. It'll be 7.5, the next day it's 7.2. Okay, so yeah, so it's only a 0.3 per day drop, so it's not very much. So really easy to add to that one. I had the elk solution. It will still go down. My sand isn't chunking it up. What's going on? Minimal coralline algae. Well, I guess, how much coral, like how much demand do you have in the tank? I'm at a really weird place with this tank where my elk is hovering at 11 or 12 and it's not dropping despite having a bunch of coral in it. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out that one. Like, how is it not consuming more? I added a bunch of random cuttings from my tank in there, added a bunch of hammers, a bunch of other stuff, and my doser's been turned off for almost a month, which is very weird. So the other thing that it might possibly be, I know originally I dosed a bunch and it almost felt like the rock absorbed it for a while, and then I had to quit dosing for a while. It was almost like it leached it back out. It took me ages to get my elk back down. So there could be some weirdness like that going on in your tank. Have you tried coral sorting yet? Is that supposed to be spawning, or is that, I don't know what sorting is. I'm assuming you mean spawning. And if not, let me know. But yes, I have spawned some corals, which is kind of fun. It's definitely kind of a cool another level to the hobby. Dun, dun, dun. On the other fun stuff, one of my new show and tell toys. So shout out to Squidgely, because they sent me this, so thank you guys, for a coral grabber. I thought the thing was super cool. So normally, I used to use this thing, which is like the classic $10 or $20 one, but it doesn't work that well because one, it sticks all the time. It doesn't always open back up, which is rather annoying if you're trying to move stuff in the tank. Yeah, so it's kind of doesn't work the best, but these are cheap, readily available. So that's what I've only ever used, and they sent me this. And I thought it was really cool because you can pivot the head to different positions. So you can use it to like pick up a frag plug with or a frag with a little holder. You can pivot and get in all weird angles and move it around. So I don't know, I thought it was really cool. So that's my new little coral grabber toy. So yeah, thank you to Squiggly for sending that out. Super cool. Not the cheapest, but it's definitely the best one I've used. And they have different ends you can put on, so that's pretty cool. Alright, Mike, what else you got here? I have 1 Monty, 2 torches, with some snails, crabs. It's about all the demand. Yeah, so the demand's pretty low, so that kind of makes sense for a chunk of it. Other half is 2 years old. I have since stopped dosing everything and seem to have stopped dropping around 6.8. Going to be a month or so and see what happens. Yeah, that is a weird one, but I have definitely seen it where rock has absorbed elk and held the levels really high for quite a while for it to dose it. Like I've experienced that myself a year or 2 ago, which at the time I had no idea what was going on, but that's still kind of my current running theory on it. Planet 3D, was that supposed to be spawning? I still need to know. What is the lowest CA elk and mag you recommend? I am in general a big fan of having it, you know, in that 8 to 9 range for elk. That being said, I've had it low. I've had it down to, you know, like 6.5 or so, and everything was still perfectly fine and thriving in the tank. Calcium and mag, I think those were still a bit higher. I think they were 380 to 440 range. Magnesium, I don't remember what that tank was. But again, I personally try and keep it a bit higher. It's like 1350 to 1450 range for magnesium. Calcium, you know, generally over 400, I'm happy. Any tips on digitate hydroids? Are those the little tiny jellyfish octopus looking guys? I have not really had an issue. Oh, those are the little stringy guys. Yeah, so there's a few different types of hydroids. I think those are the ones with the little like thing coming out. Gary, enjoy your content on Ozone, auto feeder, sump solution. Oh, thank you, Gary. Much appreciated. I've actually been debating redoing that on my new tank now, so I can add an auto feeder back in and hide it. It's a great way to go. And hiding everything just keeps the tank looking really great. So thank you, sir, for the super chat. ReefDudes, if Lord Neptune swims ashore and tells you he's taking all the fish in your peninsula to your tank back, except one, he lets you choose, what do you say? Man, that's always such a hard question. It really is. You know, from like a maintenance perspective, my mind's like, oh, I should keep at least 1 tang. If I'm just talking about the fish that I like, that I think are super cool, like I would be tempted probably to keep my Copperband because I just love the body and the look and the distinct lines on him. I think he's very cool looking. Again, another one too, I would almost consider keeping the Mandarin as well, because that's a fish where you don't even have to feed it. It's if you have a decent pod population and an established system, he has an endless supply of food. So that's a very low maintenance fish. So I don't know, it depends. It's a really tough one to answer, King Neptune, on that one. Polo1126, 49 super chat, thank you, sir, I appreciate that. I've been using a Hana Salinity pen for a few years, calibrated prior to every use, but recently I found it has drifted. What do you use for salinity? I have a Hana pen as well. I calibrate it probably once a month. I do have 2 of them too, so I will use them to kind of cross-check each other. But that's what I use 90% of the time. I mean, there's always good old-fashioned refractometers is another option. They're easy to calibrate with RODI, or you know, use calibration solution if you want to make it extra accurate. If you want something you never have to calibrate, there is hydrometers, which are the floaty ones, which I may or may not. Yeah, if you want the whole like never worry about it, always be accurate. Mine's broken, very delicate, so that's the downfall. Case in point, mine broke. Well, that sucks. So, assuming this wasn't broken, you have these bobbers you put in the water, and they have a little thing on top, and they float, and you never need to calibrate it. But, downfall, extremely delicate. As you can see, mine finally broke. So, but that's kind of a cool way that you never have to calibrate it. So it's kind of something that's nice to have as a bit of a second guess. And yeah, I need a new one. That sucks. But yeah, in general, I find the Hana Salinity pens are pretty good, and monthly has been overall pretty good for calibrating it. If it is drifting, I don't know if it's worth cleaning it. I do notice that you do get a little bit of like a carbon buildup, almost like pencil kind of shrapnel, and you can see that little black disc, and I think it's just a chunk of carbon in there. And it might be worth taking a little Q-tip and just giving it a good clean around all the probe sensors and stuff, and that might even, you know, make it a little more accurate. But I would give that a try. Planet 3D, have you reduced any equipment settings to save energy cost? I cut my lights a little and my tank has never looked better. On that note, I did the high intensity light kit on the Radions. I didn't do it on this tank yet because this tank's pretty wide. It's 28 inches wide. But on my water box, I put the high intensity lens kit on it, and I dropped my lights percentage by about 25%. So my Radions are now using 25% less power. So that was actually like a, you know, good 100 something watts of power that I'm now saving, or more than that. So that definitely helped to cut power. Like, the tank seems pretty happy overall. I even picked up another one. I put them in a vivarium because, again, I have a freshwater one on it, and I did that, so it cut power again on that one. So there you go. That's the big one. I run my UV less because that also takes a bunch of power. It's not bad, but so speaking UV, Than, we added a UV sterilizer on our biggest system, back ordered for a long time, and the difference in water clarity is super noticeable overnight. We're already running Ozone, but now it's clear. You know, Than, I've been curious how big of a difference of like just Ozone or Ozone and UV. So now you're gonna make me turn mine back on because now I need to compare. The funny thing is I originally kind of went that route because I'm like, ooh, can I clean the glass less? Can it be any clearer? That was the original kind of push towards it. So no, it's interesting to know you're already using UV and you still notice a big difference. Mike, I thought Ozone was the end-all be-all for water clarity. I still mainly say that it is. Like, Ozone, so Ozone takes 2 or 3 watts of power. You need very little of it and you get crystal clear water. If you're running a big UV, you know, you might be at, you know, 50, 70, 100 watts of power running 24/7. So it's not as efficient to give you water clarity, but they both can get you there. But now I'm curious. I have one. It's been turned off for a while. Usually in the wintertime when it's colder, because it does add heat to your water, I'll run it more frequently in over like the winter when it is colder, because then my heaters don't run as much. And same thing in the summertime, I'll run UV less just because I don't want the extra heat in the water. Polo. I cross-check with the refractometer after just order the hydrometer. Sorry about yours. Yeah, I didn't even know it broke. That sucks. That happens. UV trumps O3 in every case for me personally. I have both. What are your reasonings, Fish Fincher? I'm curious on that one. Reef Keeper. Good thread on Reef to Reef about benzidol used against hydroids. Benzidol is kind of like a sledgehammer approach to a lot of things in a reef tank. You know, it can work on a lot of different algaes. So actually, no, sorry, completely scrap that one. The benzidol, that's a dewormer, so that will work on those for sure. That should. Michael, I've been using Ozone for about 6 months, 4 hours a night, up to 380. I can't see a difference. I was thinking running it lower to see if it would help. If you, with Ozone, I always try and find that point where you're running just enough. You don't need excessive amounts of it. And if you run it longer, you might not see any more benefit. Like, once your water is clear, it's clear. Except for Than's UV/Ozone, because I'm curious. Canadian Reefer. Okay, so first, John, can you use UV just in the sump? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily just float a bulb in the middle of your sump. You don't want to look at it for your eyes. It's not good for you. That's why they're usually contained. And it kind of forces the contact time. But in theory, yes, I mean, I'm sure you could. As long as it contacts with your water, it's going to help kill a lot of the stuff that flows by it. But finding the right contact time is key. Less of an issue if you're using it for water clarity and algae, if you don't care about the fish pathogen side of it. Diatoms in a 1-year nano tank. Why? That's probably happened for a bit of a mini cycle. Like, if you disturb, you know, too much of the sand bed or move too many rocks around, sometimes that can cause, I just call it a mini cycle. and that can do diatoms. And usually same thing, they'll go away after a little while. It's generally not a big deal. You know, something died, there could just something upset the balance of the tank a little bit. So again, it's usually just a temporary thing and not something to worry about too much. Tidal gardens. Another reason to use ozone plus UV is that the residual ozone goes through the UV light, it breaks it down. Yeah, no, that's a very valid point then. You could take the output of your skimmer and suck your UV feed pump from there, and you probably get most of it through that. Mo, good to go. Happy reefing. See you later, buddy. Fish Ventura. Turn off O3, leave Pentair E80s on. No real difference. Turn off UV, leave O3 on. Looks different. I mean, that being said, Downs is probably a big system and every tank is different. It's honestly been a while since I turned my UV on, so I don't know. I'm going to do this experiment. My interest is piqued. Do you have to repopulate bacteria after treating for cyanobacteria with ChemiClean? I don't know if you need to, but it doesn't hurt to do it. ChemiClean is kind of like an antibiotic in a sense. It will probably take out some of your bacteria. That being said, bacteria will reestablish itself in your tank, whatever's in there. Now, if you want to boost up the numbers, it definitely doesn't hurt to use a bit of a bottle bacteria with it. Ryan, I do coral stone on the weekend, hydrogen peroxide usually Wednesdays, works also well. Hydrogen peroxide actually can work fairly well as well. I had one buddy where he used to put on a doser in his 150-ish tank. I think he could dose like 20 gallons a day. And it was kind of his anti-algae slash, you know, help clear the water thing. I haven't put on a doser. I only ever use it to spot treat when I need to kill off algae. But what is your opinion on All-for-Reef? Just started a month ago and my parameters are now stable. Coral looks great. Never did trace before All-for-Reef. Yeah, so your corals, Chris, are probably gonna be happier right off the bat just because they're now getting the trace elements. I've started using it, I don't know, maybe it's a month or two ago now on my Nano Reef, which is my Goni Nano on my desk. And it's the only thing I dose. I think I'm at like 2.5 mils a day. Super duper easy, one dosing pump. So far I think it's a really cool product. I also, for whatever reason, tried to put some in my big tank. I think I set it around 25 mils a day just to offset the dosing a little bit. So that's also on there for kind of a small dose to test it out, see how things react. But yeah, so far so good. It's cool because it has trace elements in it, one dosing pump. A lot of solid pluses there. So I like it, Chris. So far so good. UV heats my tank. Yeah, exactly, right? So if it's colder and UV's in your tank, that could be a good thing. If it's the middle of summer and your tank is roasting, maybe you don't want that extra heat in there. So that's part of my play into it. If I didn't run ozone, I'd probably rely on UV a lot more. But since I have ozone, it's kind of like a secondary thing. Jordan, any idea if the lunar settings for Ecotech lights helps with spawning? I would theorize yes, because a lot of the coral spawning is tied to moon cycles. And if you're simulating the moon cycles, or at least simulating the moon, it probably does play into it. So I theorize it does. Can't say 100%, but I theorize it does. Gary, do you use an ozone controller with an ORP probe to manage your ozone generator? So I do, kind of as a backup. So my ozone runs at a very low setting. It comes on at, I believe it's like 1 in the morning to 4 in the morning, 1 to 5 in the morning. But I have a statement in there where if my ORP goes over 400 or 410, whatever I set it to, then turn off my ozone. It has to be off for minimum 20-30 minutes. So I do have the ORP probe as a bit of a failsafe, just make sure it never gets too high. Because too much is bad, a little bit, lots of good. Custard, should I be feeding my nano tank with clowns every day? I do. I feed my fish every day. They're hungry. I think it's good for them. I've heard some pet stores, some places only feed every other day, but personally, I think it's better to feed little bits more frequently than less more often. And it could be as simple as just a couple pellets. I normally feed frozen food. I have some little random pellets in here, which are ones I'll just randomly feed them as well. Just little soft clownfish pellets. So kind of depends on the day what they get, but more the merrier, I'd say, as a general rule. And as long as your tank isn't short on nutrients, then that's another reason to feed them more often. I know lots of people, you know, they're struggling to get nutrients up, and if that's the case, feed your tank more. It makes everything happier. Planet 3D. I'm 7 years into the hobby, so very salty. Excellent. But most exit after 2 years. How can we keep new folks in the hobby long term? Honestly, I think one of the biggest things is helping them be successful. Like, that's partially part of the purpose of why I did ReefDudes in the thing. If you look at my little catch line or whatever, like making reefing easy. You know, I definitely do go into a lot of advanced stuff, but in general, I try and take complex things and simplify it, or just take an easy approach to it. So I think just helping people be successful is going to keep them in the hobby. If you know, like last week's video, you know, how I beat turf algae, you know, how I would get rid of cyano. These are things that people would exit the hobby because their tanks is full of cyano and they don't know what to do, right? Or it's full of hair algae or turf algae. So it's all these things that are what drive people out from making them not successful. So if you help people be successful, then they'll stay in the hobby long term, which I think is better for everybody. One-armed reefer. One thing with ozone, you need to keep an eye on the feed line from the skimmer, as they have a habit of baking up even when ozone resistant tubing. Yeah, so I think it's called Nylar or Kylar tubing. But yeah, you definitely do want to use tubing that is ozone safe, because if not, it will get kind of gummed up and, you know, brittle or break down over time. I know the original one that I ran to the laundry room below to upstairs, that one's still perfectly fine. But I know some of the RODI and other tubes that along the chain, you know, they have definitely, you know, some chunks that wouldn't hurt to replace them. Jay Barrett. What could cause high levels of aluminum? I've had this issue in my tank. Show on ICP from the start. I've checked every piece of equipment for rust and damage, nothing. There was some forms of ceramic media that in theory leached aluminum in the past. Possible thing of it. Another big thing is too, it might be worth doing the ATI ICP test that also tests your RODI water, just to see if it's possibly coming in as part of your tap water, right? Maybe it's coming in there. So it's probably worth checking that as well. Still breeding Bergia. I'm not. I ran out of Aiptasia. That's one of the biggest things. I was helping someone earlier with this. They wanted to start breeding it. I'm like, get a 20 or 40 gallon tank of Aiptasia, because they will eat through it. That was one of the hardest things. Like, it's good for a while, but after a while, you're gonna run out. They are ferocious little eaters, especially once the colony explodes. You're gonna have to feed more and more Aiptasia, feed those little hungry mouse to keep them going. And it is hard to keep that up. Like, if you want to breed Aiptasia, I would have minimum like a 20 breeder size tank full of Aiptasia. Now you could take out an Aiptasia or two and put it into the Bergia tank and feed it that way. What happened to me, I don't even know how this happened, but I had like a 4 gallon tank, whatever it was, with Aiptasia in it, and somehow a Bergia got into that tank and decimated all of the Aiptasia that I had up, and I ran out of food source, so I just kind of sold off some of them. Background music too loud. There you go. Lower it down a bit. So yeah, if you want to breed Bergia, make sure you have a very large tank, as much space as you have with Aiptasia if you want to be successful. Okay, Than, I was talking with BRS Ryan about how long people stay in the hobby. Average is low, but it seems like companies that focus on education have customers stick around longer than average. I think so, like 100%. You help people be successful and they're going to stick in the hobby longer, right? Like, most people love it. And why you get out of the hobby is, you know, something happens or you have a tank crash. You know, there could be a financial reason, or you're moving, or there could be that type of reason. But a lot of it is because, you know, your tank doesn't look good. You're not enjoying it. It's full of algae or a cyano, or there's some pest taking over. That takes all the fun out of it. Where if your tank looks beautiful, your friends come over, everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. It's going to keep you excited about it. Where if it looks like crap, you're not going to be excited about it. So finding ways to be successful, overcoming these hurdles, you know, making it easy to come over the hurdles goes a long way for keeping people in the hobby. And I think that really does play into it. Anthony, running a new water box 10 gallon cube with one Mocha Storm Clown. What would be a good addition to this nano tank? Depends what you want to do with it. There's like court jester gobies, like those little tiny guys. I would add a small goby likely. You know, there's yellow clown gobies, there's the green ones, there is... Rainford goby, I think. Is that the same as little court jesters, little tiny guys? But I would add just some little tiny fish in that one. The 10 gallon's not huge. Royal Gamma, that would probably outgrow that tank after a while. What do you think of the aquarium? What do you think of them banning the aquarium hobby, as in Saving Nemo? I think the aquarium hobby does a lot of good for the world. If you look at the coral spawning, you know, the coral restoration projects, you know, now that we can capture breed fish, I think there's a lot of good stuff that helps, you know, the environment, you know, the reefs as a whole. It definitely depends on what aspect of it. You know, there's definitely good and bad sides to everything in life, right? But if you consider the fact that what the aquarium hobby takes out of the ocean is very minuscule compared to, say, what happens with feeder fish. Like, you know, you take those big fish and those big net trollings, they take out massive amounts of fish and stuff from the ocean, where the aquarium hobby is like barely like a speck in that graph of, you know, what's coming out. But I don't know how much like fisheries really do to help restock the ocean, or at least on the reef side, a lot of people that have reef tanks appreciate the ocean and they want to help, you know, it makes you want to help save the reefs and protect it. And the reefs are what create the fish populations, you know, so spawning corals, rebuilding the reefs, all that stuff helps rebuild the oceans. And I think the aquarium hobby is what builds appreciation for it and helps kind of push people to do those projects later on. So I think, I mean, it's all in perspective, but I think there's a lot of good comes out from inspiring people by seeing and having beautiful reef tanks and sharing that with people. Because if you don't know, you just look out the ocean, you're like, oh, look, there's just some water, you know, like a lot of people don't know of all the beauty and amazing stuff is down below that water. Just ordered a dose pump to add top off water and All-for-Reef. Perfect. Is it true you can dial it in and keep elk stable via the Apex Trident? You can, with some caveats to that one. With All-for-Reef, I know the elk, it takes a little bit to show up. It's a bit delayed. I believe it was Lou, when I had him on a live stream, if you want to watch it, from a month ago or so. But I believe he was saying, because I asked him about it, because someone told me, he told him to dose it based off the calcium. So I believe he was using the Trident's calcium level to tweak the All-for-Reef level. So that might be worth going. But yeah, there's a little bit of a delay with it, so that's the one thing to note. Ever know anyone that ran into issues with toxins from Bergia? And when you eventually run out of Aiptasia, I've been told they cause tank crashes in a small water volume. I have not experienced any of those issues, so in my opinion, I don't think so. But again, you never know, right? If it's super tiny system and you had excessive amounts, you know, that might be a different story, but the dozen or two that I had in my tank, I had never really had any issues like that. The amazing thing I thought, like when I dosed, what were we talking about there? Not fish bendable, fluconazole. I had hair algae and a bunch of other nasty stuff in this tank at one point, and I was trying to get rid of all this stuff. So I dosed, I think I did a double or triple dose of fluconazole, you know, killed off all the algae, did all this stuff, and I was like pulling it down, changing the frag racks. I thought it was out of Bergia, and I put all this stuff, like some racks with zoas and stuff, into another temporary tank when I was doing some of this stuff. And I found probably 40 or 50 Bergia in there. Now, I thought the wrasses would have ate them. I have, you know, Melanaris wrasse and some other guys in there, which are definitely pretty good pest hunters. And somehow the Bergia still exploded. They still found tons of hiding spots, and they did pretty well in there. So I thought that was pretty cool. So they are really good survivors. A lot of time you don't see them, but they're still in there. But yeah, the biggest thing is you need to have Aiptasia to keep feeding them, to keep them going. Buffalo Bill J. I had a population in 25 lagoon, took care of my Aiptasia, and went away with no ill effect. Yeah, so if you run out, eventually they will just fade off. So, I mean, you could resell them, you can give them to a buddy, or if you have an Aiptasia source, you know, keep them going to have that little supply of Aiptasia hunters. By the time Bergia started, they're at least toxic. Yeah, I don't know. I've honestly never heard of them being toxic, but they're, as long as they have Aiptasia, they're so easy. I've grew them in a jar on my desk. I've had them in little mini tanks. You know, I put in my aquariums. They're super easy. You know, as long as they don't get picked off by a fish, and as long as they have Aiptasia, they're pretty happy little guys. Dun. Yeah, and Chris, the other thing too with your dose pump, if you're using it as your auto top off, same thing. It's just one of those manual tweak things. You can either use an optical sensor and kind of automate it off of that, or just estimate and then just see is your water trending upwards or downwards, and just manually tweak your dose a bit. Anthony, for your 10-gallon cube, so what are some other cool nano fish? Clowns, again, they're pretty easy. I'd probably only do one in a 10-gallon. There's cool little blennies like the yellow Midas blenny is pretty cool. They get a bit bigger though. There is the tail spot blenny. Those guys are super cool. They stay pretty tiny. Yeah, I just look at all kinds of cool nano fish. Homegrown Frags, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Awesome. Gonna do. How many would you start with in a 20-gallon? They're super expensive in the UK. Depending on how expensive they are, I mean, putting 10 in there would probably do the job. You can start with less, but it will take longer. So once they're eating, they're happy, they readily will lay eggs, and those eggs will turn to more Bergia, but it takes a while for those eggs to hatch. So if you add 20 off the bat, you're gonna, they'll get to town on it pretty quick. If you add 3, they'll eat some, they'll lay eggs. A few months later, you'll have a bunch more. Then if they'll lay some eggs, you'll have a bunch more. So you can do it with less, it just takes a lot longer. So it really depends on your budget. I know here I've seen them anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks Canadian. So I don't know what they're in the UK. Gary, do you think it's possible to put SPS in an animated marine 30-gallon long? Of course it is, absolutely. My first reef tank that was full of SPS was a 12-gallon fluval edge, and then I had a bunch in the 12 or 14-gallon. It was the animated marine that was like the curvy sides. I think it was called the Fusion. I had the 16 and then the 24, and those all had Acros in. You can put Acros in anything. One of my favorite tanks that I had just for like contents wise was probably the Red Sea. I don't know if it was a 15 or 20-gallon, but same thing. Tons of Acros and rock flowers and all kinds of cool colorful stuff in there. Super happy. As long as you keep stuff stable, Acros will be happy. That's the biggest thing. I know some people say it's harder in a small tank, but that's only because it might be harder to keep stability. But again, with all the stuff we have now and dosers and auto top offs, like, it's not that bad. And the nice thing in a small tank is if you are religious about doing a water change, you could do a 5-gallon bucket water change, every other week, and I bet you'll never have an issue with that tank. It just kind of resets things. It kind of keeps things stable. You might have a mil or two on the doser. Real easy. Still getting algae, not green hair, in my frag tank after 3 months. No coralline yet. Should I add pods? Depends what type of algae you have. Pods are almost always a good idea to a tank, so I would say yes. Pods are kind of like a tiny cleanup crew, so it's good. But if it's turf algae or something like that, it might be worth adding something a little more aggressive towards it. If you take something like emerald crab, again, they'll pick at algae. If you have as none by the glass, but tuxedo oranges, those guys are phenomenal. Again, in a frag tank, they could be a bit of a pain because they could pick up your frags and move stuff, so you'd want to watch out for that one. Again, there's always like turbo snails and stuff as well. Planet 3D, a friend of mine has been an eco warrior for decades, never liked my tank, but now he's changed around and believes that seeing underwater world in home tanks actually educates a lot of folks. 100%. I think it inspires people. Like, whenever people come over, we hang out around the tank. People come check about it, they want to check it out, check things. It makes people appreciate the underwater world, and I think that's a big part of it. And like I've been in the Cayman Islands at some point a few years back, and I helped doing coral restoration. I never would have did that if I didn't have a reef tank. So I've helped donate my time to do coral restoration, which I think was really cool. Got diving, got to see coral spawn in the wild. It was like an amazing trip. But if I didn't have a reef tank, that never would have happened, right? If I'm creating educational content, how to help people be successful with a reef tank. Again, that would never happen if I didn't have a reef tank. So there's a lot of good that can come from it. So 2 cameras in action. Thanks, Dan. I'm playing today. I decided to experiment. Do you have to feed Phyto to copepods? You do not have to feed it. Phytoplankton is the base food source of the ocean, right? It's a super tiny, minuscule phytoplankton, and basically everything eats it. Now, if you have pods in your tank and you dose phytoplankton, it will help your pod population explode. So you kind of get better bang for your buck out of buying and adding pods to your tank when you do dose some phyto. Again, it's not something you have to do all the time forever, but it will help boost your population up. Anthony, thank you for the super chat, buddy. I appreciate it. What's going on, Gabe? What's going on, Pjort? Dizadadegzik. I don't know how to say your last name. I apologize. It's a tricky one to pronounce. Anthony, thank you, sir. But yeah, so definitely there's benefits to doing it. Not required, but I randomly dose to my tank. No set schedule. When I used to culture it, I would dose tons of it and copious amounts of it. And now I just kind of do it once in a while. Safara, why does the Red Sea Reef dose won't allow you to dose more than 999 mils in a day? Any way around it? I don't have one of those. I've never used it, so I cannot comment on that one. It's probably just a programming error. They don't expect people to do auto top-offs and random stuff with it, and probably just assume you're not going to dose more than 1,000 mils a day. So unfortunately, probably not, but I'm not too sure. Maybe you can set up that much per dose and do, say a 12-hour dose at that much, and maybe try a second 12-hour dose at that amount. Might be worth a shot, but you have to try that one out. I should see fish and corals for years now. Should add he has seen the same fish and corals for years now. Oh, you're talking about your buddy, the eco guy. What's going on, Martin? All right, guys, what do you got for questions? Fire a few at me. I got about 20 minutes. So, any reefing questions, fire. I don't care. Try and pick something hard, stump me. Whatever questions you got, bring it on. What's the overall benefits of Phyto? Okay, so phytoplankton, again, is one of the base foods of the ocean. It will help boost up your copepods. If you have filter feeding corals in your tank, again, they will appreciate it. Smaller clams definitely appreciate it. Bigger ones, they probably still do, but they're more photosynthetic. But if you have like argonians, you have MPS, like a lot of like sea apples, any type of filter feeders are going to appreciate it. So base food of the ocean, it goes up. Your copepods eat the phytoplankton. They're now gut loaded. Your mandarin eats the copepod that's gut loaded. He's getting those nutrients from the Phyto. So it kind of just helps feed everything overall. Jay, thank you. Also a lot for the entertainment and knowledge. Happy to help. Thank you for all the entertainment knowledge I've got from your videos. I have a long drive between work and home. Your podcast keeps me sane in traffic. Happy to help keep you sane. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it, buddy. Reef Exotico by Lewis. What's going on, Lewis? Went home to drop off the kids after school. Both my torches riddled with brown jelly. Oh, no, that sucks, man. It's probably too late now, but if they're not fully done, sometimes even a chemi-clean bath can help kind of kill off the stuff that's doing it and save the rest of the heads. If they're not all done for, frag off the bad ones, but yeah, that sucks. Sorry to hear that one. Exo Reef, how often are you using coral snow? I'm trying to do it every few days on this tank, the one behind me, mainly just because there's some vermetid snails in there which I'm ridding. My concoction has dried up. This is what I get for not putting a lid on it. But anyways, that's the calcium carbonate powder, so yeah, I'll mix in some more RDI and resuspend it and dose it again. But every few days until I rid all the vermetid snails. I also did add 20 bumblebees in there. So they're also helping fight the good fight. Yeah, so, there you go. 2 people asking on it. So Than, that's exactly why. So this tank, again, I'm not really doing it for water clarity. I did do that at one of the parts of the video just because that is the reason most people do it. But to starve out the vermetid snails is the main purpose. When the vermetid snails, so ideally you feed your fish first. The vermetid snails sense the food, they come out. And you dose the coral snow, and they suck it in. They're kind of non-discriminate. Whatever sticks to the little web, they're going to suck into their mouth. And there is 0 nutrition value within this. So when they start filling their stomachs with the calcium carbonate powder, it kind of starves them out and kind of reduces their numbers over time. So now after a few months, there should be a nice noticeable difference from this. Did you ever dose silicates before? Can't get rid of dinos for 1.5 years now and had them for 3 months. I have dosed silicates. When I was fighting dinos in this tank at one point, I kind of threw the kitchen sink at it, and part of the things that I did was dosing silicates to feed the diatoms to help outcompete the dinos. So definitely goes, but you know, UV can help, that can help, blackouts can help. It really depends on the type of dinos you have, so that is worth checking out and figuring out what type you have to know which the best way to beat them. Gabe, I have a small tank, Evo 13.5. What's a great way to build up my pods? 2 clowns and a little wrasse. So yeah, same thing. Again, if you do buy or add some pods to your tank, pick up a bottle of Phyto as well and just give it a squirt every couple days, and that will just help feed the pods and help them explode. And again, if you ideally having a refugium or somewhere for the pods or a bit of a safety for the fish helps as well too, to help boost it even more. Capture guard veil. There we go. Do you have or have you tried carbon dosing? If so, what did you use? I want to get off using lithium chloride. So I have in the past. I haven't used any like the newer fancier methods. I did it with vodka back in the day, like vinegar vodka methods. And I kind of did it short term. It did help reduce nitrates, which was my main purpose at the time. I had a weird issue though, where my yellow tank started getting this like orangey red blotchiness on him. So I quit dosing, that went away, so it kind of turned me off from it from that point. If I was to do it again, I would probably try one of like, you know, the more product-y ones, probably one of the Tropic Marines ones. Because it's cool how they have different ones that target, you know, with phosphates, without phosphates, like different scenarios. So that's probably what I would try if I was to do it again, but it's definitely been a number of years since I've carbon dosed. Crumdabum had RTN event without a clear cause. Suspect magnitude of issues, ignoring causes. Can you discuss life after RTN when restocking general measures? Okay, so RTN STN either just means slow or rapid tissue narcosis. It's when you have acros and the flesh kind of starts to disappear or peel off of it, and they'll just start going white. A lot of the time it kind of starts at the base and works its way up. So I have seen it the other way, but it's primarily how I've seen it. If it's RTN and it's moving fairly rapidly, generally I will frag the coral above, you know, a 1/4 inch above where the RTN is. And a lot of the, not always, but a lot of the time you can save some chunks from that. Now I've also had STN where I've seen it happening and I've done nothing and I ignored it and it just stopped on its own. And then the coral was kind of recovered over time. So there's been a few different situations that I've been in with that one. As for what causes it, usually it's a stress event in your tank. And it could have been something that happened weeks ago. So it might not necessarily be what just happened in your tank. And that's the tricky bit. Because it could be, you know, something fresh, could be something old. It could be, you know, a lot of things stressed it out and something just pushed over the edge. As for like general preventive measures, the biggest thing is just stability in your tank, you know, keeping your salinity stable, your temperature reasonably stable, you know, your dosing relatively stable, just stuff to kind of keep your coral happy without stressing it in one direction or another. Will dried phytoplankton work or the preserved ones? Preserved, yes. Dried, I haven't actually tried dried to be honest, so I'm not 100%. I'm assuming it will. I don't think it'll work as well, but it's better than not doing it. What causes crazy polyp in acros? Flow or something else? It is a few different things. So happy polyps out is generally a sign of good health in an acro. If you don't have the polyps out, it could mean that fish is picking on it. It could mean it's not happy about some of your parameters. It could mean that there's a pest on it, like flatworms or red bugs or something on it that's annoying it, and retracting it. So it's usually, when you don't see polyps, usually it means something's picking on it, pest, fish, or otherwise, or something's not stable and it's not as happy. If you had a wish list for new equipment, what would be on it? I assume a Wi-Fi heater would not be on your list. I don't know. I'm a little bit spoiled that I've had, you know, tanks for, you know, 8 to 10 years, and I don't know. I'm out of, like, there's nothing I need anymore. Like, I have everything that my tanks need. So it's hard to say, you know, if I was to build a new tank, then I'd have a new wish list. But the current tanks, like they're chucking along pretty good. So it really depends on the tank. I'll let you know if I start a new tank what's on the wish list. Hope the KFC dip saves them. I had good success with the KFC dip. I did a couple treatments on my Hellfire torches. I think they're Hellfire or Dragonsteel. Sorry, Dragonsteel. They were the flesh band underneath the head was slowly receding and getting closer and closer to the mouth. Now, again, you know, when it's receding, not the good thing. It's not really growing and expanding. I did those treatments probably 6 months, maybe longer. Maybe it's a year ago by now. I have to look at my video, see the timeline. But anyways, now they're all happy. They're healthy. You know, they have a nice, healthy, solid flesh band on it. And that's what the biggest thing that I noticed with it. So for me, it definitely did work. I did take them out. I did give them kind of a bath, like a 6-hour dip or whatever it was. And I did that a couple times. And it definitely made a big difference for improvement on them. Fish Reef AA. What's a good recommendation for an Ozone brand / doser? I have 2 different ones. I have like a cheaper China random brand, and I have the Ozotech. You know, the cheaper one's like an $80 one. The Ozotech one's like a couple $100 one. Ozotech one's definitely better built, and you can replace parts in it. It requires less maintenance. The cheaper one, it definitely does work, but you got to take it apart and clean it a lot more frequently. And again, if it breaks, you got to buy a new one. Where the Ozotech one, I can replace the corona discharge. You know, there's a nice big cavity in it, where the other one has a super little thin one in it. So I mean, there's pros and cons to it, but Ozotech's kind of the one that I've liked, just because it's a very robust, solid one. But it does cost more, so take that into account. AskReef. I ran a sediment and a carbon filter for a couple weeks. Helped with the dinos along with UV and dosing hydrogen peroxide. Yeah, it's like the kitchen sink method. You just throw everything at it, see what works. Wife price reefer. Settled the debate now. Actinics versus full spectrum lighting. I appreciate both, but I feel that full spectrum is better for your tank and corals. There's a lot more color and spectrum during those whiter periods of the day, which I think have a lot of things on it. Like if anyone in the chat is using my schedule, you'll know it starts, you know, very blue, very AB plus-ish in the morning. Around noon to 4 p.m. it is fairly white crispiness, and then it goes back to more the bluey look later in the day. Now, case in point, I had one of my Aggie tort spawned in my tank a few weeks ago. So the coral spawning in my tank, you know, definitely says it's happy. I have a chunk of my day that's full spectrum lighting on the tank, so that obviously plays into it being super duper happy. So I don't know. If that's not justification, I don't know what is. So that's what I'm going for. ReefDudes schedule. Tried, true, proven coral spawning under it. Yeah. Good stuff. Cheers. Cheers, Lee. Have you ever thought about asking Josh from WWC on a live? I should get him on, actually. A long time ago, I think, when I was down there, I was bugging about it. He was super camera shy. I was like, I don't know. But now he's done so much from now, I think I could probably talk him into it again. So it'd be good. Ryan, Josh, and yourself for a podcast will be legendary. I'll see if I can make it happen. I think it'd be fun. I bet I could talk them into it. Uptown Reef. Are you worried about your apex starting a fire? No, not at all. The only way something like that I could foreseeably happen would be if you dumped a bunch of salt water on it and did, shorted stuff out. And so ideally have your gear where it's not going to catch on fire. Like mine are in a cabinet under the sump. It's not on the floor beside it or stuff's going to drip on it, right? So it's contained and away from the drips. Lincoln Towns. Is there a benefit to carbon dosing other than getting nitrates down? You should watch the live stream I did with Lou from Tropic Marine on carbon dosing. He does a really good job of explaining it. But one of the other big benefits is the bacteria from carbon dosing helps feed the coral. So you're almost thinking of it as a way to feed the coral, not just a way to lower nutrients. So I thought that was a really cool perspective, which does make a lot of sense. So I would definitely recommend that. It's a really good watch. That was a great stream. All right, Planet 3D. What's your view of mixing manufacturer lighting above the tank? Any tips for lighting control? Personal preference, honestly, at the end of the day. if you take a look at this guy, I have 4 XR15s and I have 2 AI blades on either side for just a bit of fill / color pop. It works. 2 different brands, it's fine. You know, if you want to check out a video I did like 4 or 5 years ago now, it was called Super Simple Reef Tank with Wincy. Sadly, her tank's no more. She shut it down, but it had, I think she had every type of lighting you could think of on that tank. She had so many random brands of stuff. Everything's like mishmashed on there. It's just like a basic crazy spectrum of stuff. So yeah, anything can work. Like to me, a lot of it comes down to aesthetics. I could have a whole slew of stuff, but there's a lot of bulk, a lot of stuff on my tank, or I have it very minimal and sleek. I personally kind of tend to go for the sleekness factor. Like I want my tanks to have most of my gear hidden, right? I want it to look minimal and sleek, and you know, to me, it's a piece of living room art. So I go for a lot of sleekness that still does the job. But yes, absolutely, you can mix to your heart's content. Personal preference on that one. And tips for lighting control, again, that depends on the manufacturer. You know, a cheap light is going to have very basic control. You might need a manual timer. It might not dim itself. You know, fancier lights are going to have schedules where you can bring it up or down and, you know, automate that aspect of it. Evan Croft, starting a 250 gallon tank with a 60 gallon sump, solid size. When should I start a refugium to help maintain phosphate and nitrates? Wait till if you're just cycling the fish, or cycling the tank, don't worry about it. Once you start adding fish and actually have, you know, things pooping and you're feeding and adding nutrients to the tank, then you can start adding a refugium. Alright, one of my acros have polyp extension. It's not fluffy, but fat and stubby. I mean, as long as the polyp's out, that's like half the battle. It also depends on the type of coral. If you have something, you know, like a stag, they're gonna have little super teeny polyps. If you have like a millie, they're gonna have like a big long shaggy one. So again, it also depends on the type of coral. What's going on, Brandy? Opinions on ghetto ringing electrical house water heater to a system and taking 84-degree showers. What? Electrical house water heater to a system. I'm super confused by that one, but if you have a big enough tank, again, I wouldn't do this if you have electric heat. If you have a gas water heater and you have a very large system, taking a giant coil of PEX tubing and throwing in your sump and pumping your water heater through that with like a rheostat kind of control, like a valve, to control your tank temperature is going to save you a ton of electricity. That is a good way to do it if you have a big enough system to justify it. As for electric hose water heater, I wouldn't use my tank to heat shower water though, because that sounds expensive. But yeah, in general, electricity is a lot cheaper than gas. So that's why on a big system, you know, using your hot water tank is kind of a cool way to heat a tank. Chris, I had 30 mils of Eco Balance on Sundays. Seems to keep the cyano and dinos away. Thoughts on Eco Balance? Don't know if I've used Eco Balance. Let me see which one that is. Which brand is Eco Balance? I know the name, but I can't picture it. Okay, I haven't used that one yet. Don't have thoughts on it. Haven't tried it. I think honestly, a lot of these bottle bacteria, I think they're probably similar. They may have different strains. You know, on a new system, I would go for like the variety of spice of life mentality, where you're like, oh, a bottle of this, and a week later add a bottle of that, and just add a bunch of different stuff to establish it in the tank. And yeah, on an established tank, again, it doesn't hurt to periodically add some. I don't think you need to, but it doesn't hurt to do it to introduce potentially new beneficial strains. Buffalo Bill. Any recommendations on cheap dosing pumps, single and double heads? Kimura has some single ones that I've used in the past. I don't think I've ever used a double. Lies. The dose for a double head. I wouldn't call them cheap. You know, the cheapest dosing pump I've used has probably been the good old Jabos back in the day for, you know, $100 for your 4 heads. They're not the most accurate things in the world, but they do the job. I wouldn't use it for dosing trace elements, but if you're dosing, you know, a mil of something, not the best. If you're dosing 20 mils of something, that little bit of, you know, not perfect is probably not a big deal. What is your current feeding your fish? My staple is I generally give nori most of the time in the daytime. And I will just use some random kind of sushi nori, something just from like Asian supermarket. Again, just make sure it is straight up nori, make sure there's no spices or additives. Very important. So there's another bag of it somewhere, a different brand. So I feed nori most days. In the evening, I'm gonna say my staple is generally feeding frozen mysis, but I do mix it up. I also like a lot of the reef nutrition stuff, so I'll randomly like feed that or mix that in for treats. You know, sometimes like the clowns, like I have, you know, those random pellets that I'll throw in as well. Also some like the PE pellets that I'll randomly feed to the tank. But I'm gonna say nori and mysis is the majority what I feed, and then I mix it up with some of the other stuff. Like last night, I think I fed the Reef Nutrition's pellets. What are they called? Chroma Boost, the CTO, whatever they are. I have to bug this now. It's gonna bug me. TDO, that's what it is. Yeah. So like, you know, I fed TDO last night. So I definitely do mix it up. Next thing might come back. Carbon dosing. Yeah, I feel like carbon dosing is already starting to a little bit. Am I your long lost brother? What's going on, Chris? TDO. Yeah, TDO is a popular one. I think it's really good stuff. Hit that thumbs up, folks. Definitely. If you guys enjoyed this random reef Q&A, hit the like button. I'm trying to do at least like one a month where I just answer whatever random question you guys have, because I feel it's probably one of the more helpful ones because it's direct answers to your questions. You know, and the other chunk of the time, you know, guess whatever random topic we decide to do that week. But we are at that hour mark, and I do have to look after my kid pretty quick here, so I do have to head out pretty quick. So hopefully answered all the burning questions for tonight. Cheers, guys. I do want to give a shout out to all the folks that did give me super chats today. I super do appreciate that. Definitely does help the channel. Dedicated Reefer, Shelly, Fish Ventura, Michael, Barcombe, Gary, Polo, Anthony. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, again, if you enjoyed this, hit the like button. If you're new, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on next week's live stream. All right, guys,